Hello everyone and welcome to another special episode of Under the Skin, a web series where I take a look at the various references and meanings behind the names of the skins in Battlefield 1. I'm Christopher, the video game historian, and on this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at the other battle skins from the Turning Tides and in the name of the Tsar DLCs. They are the Battles of the Strait of Otranto, Lutsk, Gorlice-Tarnow, and Tsingtao. First skin for this video is the Battle of the Strait of Otranto skin that came with the Turning Tides DLC. And this is a reference to the Battle of the Strait of Otranto, which resulted in Austrian victory over the Allies. Throughout 1917, the Austrians launched a series of attacks aimed at the Allies' Otranto barrage in the Mediterranean, as it was comprised of anti-submarine trawlers. Every time they would lose a submarine, the Austrians would attack the barrage, believing it was the trawlers that were taking them out, regardless if that was actually true or not. During the night of May 14th to the 15th, 1917, the Austrians launched another attack, this time led and planned by Captain Miklos Horthy. At 3:30 AM, 3 cruisers designed to look like warships and 2 actual warships set sail from the port of Cattaro to the barrage. During their sail, they sunk an Italian munitions ship along with its escort, and as it was proceeding towards its intended target, began to sink 14 Allied patrol crafts within 2 hours of the attack. At the same time, a flotilla of British, French, and Italian destroyers and cruisers were on their way to chase down the warships. As the Austrians were wrapping up their attack and sailing back to port, the Allied flotilla was in pursuit, and by 7:30 in the morning managed to catch up with them. What should have been an easy victory for the Allies resulted in the Austrians getting away. The lead Allied ship, the Aquila, was destroyed by enemy fire. 2 of the destroyers suffered breakdowns and were forced to be left behind with escorts, while 1 of the British cruisers was too slow to chase and was too left behind, while the 3 remaining destroyers began to pound the Austrian fleet. As enemy reinforcements were on their way, the Allies made a hasty retreat. The barrage would be abandoned by the Allies, as it was argued by the Italian commander-in-chief that it was impossible to properly defend. Captain Horthy would be promoted to Rear Admiral in March 1918 and gain prestige for his victory in this battle. Next up is the Lutsk skin from the In the Name of the Tsar DLC, and this skin refers to the Battle of Lutsk, which kicked off the Brusilov offensive on June 4th, 1916. The battle opened up with a massive artillery bombardment on the Austrian defenses around the city, with nearly 2,000 guns along a 200-mile front firing upon the Austrian Fourth Army, commanded by Archduke Joseph Ferdinand. The Archduke believed that he held the advantage over the Russians as he had 200,000 men compared to 150,000 Russian soldiers. However, the artillery barrage took away any advantage he believed he held in numbers, as it simply decimated their front lines. Being that they used barbed wire all around the town for additional defenses, they really had nowhere to go and were trapped within the city. The Russians managed to take over their defenses and the city within 2 days and advanced 75 additional kilometers. Out of the 200,000 Austrian soldiers, 130,000 were casualties, with 26,000 being captured. This loss ruined Ferdinand's military career, as German command requested his dismissal and forced Commander Konrad von Hotzendorf to cancel another planned offensive. The Battle of Gorlice-Tarnow skin, released in the Name of the Tsar DLC for its weapons, was an early decisive battle between the Germans, Austro-Hungary, and the Russians in 1915. During the beginning of the war, Russia posed a major threat to the Austrian Empire, as they occupied the Polish salient in Eastern Europe. This meant that they could easily attack and advance towards Berlin in Germany to the west, head north into Prussia, or enter Austro-Hungary in the south through the Carpathian Mountains. This was also an issue for the Russians, as the Austrians could easily trap them inside Poland. After the Battle of Lemberg, the Austrians were pushed back to the Carpathian Mountains and faced the threat of the Russians breaking through. To counter this, General Hausendorff devised a plan with the assistance of their German allies. The plan would be for the Germans to move to the west end of the mountains and break through the Russian defenses before moving east to push them back. General Falkenhayn agreed and sent 4 corps to help out. With the German 11th and Austrian 4th armies, the Russians were outnumbered. At 6 AM on May 2nd, 1915, a 4-hour bombardment was launched, with infantry attacking at 10 AM and capturing the 1st and 2nd lines of the Russian defenses. By the end of the week, the Austrian forces managed to capture 40,000 POWs and 100 guns. Due to the rapid movement of the Austrian and German forces, the Russian Third Army was destroyed, and by June 22nd, the town of Lemberg was reclaimed. By August 5th, the Russians were forced to abandon Warsaw, and just 20 days later, Brest-Litovsk fell to the Germans. By the end of the battle, the Russians had lost 2 million troops in casualties, and as a result, Tsar Nicholas II took full control of the army despite the successful retreat. Finally, the last skin for this video is the Battle of Tsingtao skin that came with the Turning Tides DLC, and this too is a reference to the Battle of Tsingtao. In the late 19th century, the town of Tsingtao was leased to the Germans for 99 years as compensation by the Chinese government after 2 of their missionaries were found murdered there. A port would be built, and eventually the city would become the headquarters of the Far East Squadron of the German Navy under the command of Admiral Graf Spee and garrisoned 4,000 troops. In August of 1914, the Japanese gave the Germans an ultimatum: remove their fleet from Chinese and Japanese waters and give the city back to Japan, or face consequences. Japan, aligning themselves with the Allies, was looking to reclaim the city for themselves, and prepared a formal siege. In September, General Mitsuomi Kamino's 18th Division began to bombard the port from the sea, while the ground troops began to prepare for a siege. The British also sent a small force of 1,500 troops to aid the Japanese, but not because they were needed, but rather to keep an eye on them, as Britain was very distrustful of their intentions. The Germans managed to hold out for 2 months before they surrendered on November 7th. 3 days later, the Germans handed over the port to the Japanese, and China accepted their 21 demands of January 1915, although would not formally agree upon them until May. The Japanese would give back the city to China, but would not return it to Chinese control until 1922. That's all for this week's episode. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and if so, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and leave your comments down below. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media such as Facebook and Twitter, as well as add me on the Xbox One if you want to play some Battlefield 1943 together, at BaconRebellions. Until next time, I will see you on the battlefield.